This is Aaron Murakami with Emp Electronic Media and the Energy Science and Technology Conference. And today we have Eric Dollard on the line. Today is Sunday, February 18th, 2018, and it's 11 o'clock Pacific time. And so this call is being recorded. It will go up on YouTube. And so we'll just go through a couple announcements here. Let's see. So over the last several months, we have gone through a couple different changes with the 501c3 organization itself. As far as the board of directors, I've been helping raise funds for quite a while, and Justin Miller is no longer with the organization. He's been there pretty much since the beginning. But as of several months ago, I'm taking care of the work of the treasurer for the organization. Jeff Moe is the new secretary. Steve Hills is still the director of the organization, and Eric is the president of the organization. And so also over the last several months, there's been a couple volunteers. We'd like to thank Steve Young and Riggs Homan, but also Steve Hills has been to the shop there down in Nevada to help organize and kind of clean it up. And so a lot of the stuff that's been accumulating in the building, that's getting organized out in a storage locker out back, which is one of these shipping containers. And so the shop's coming together. There's been some other work done in the shops, and pretty soon some more workbenches and stuff will be going up. There's like a new stairway built up to a loft, which is kind of like a storage area, but also a place where if somebody is in town for a couple of days, they can actually sleep up there, kind of like a little room. And so those kind of things have been going on at the shop. Eric has also been doing some experiments and working on moving forward with the advanced seismic warning system, and he'll be covering that in a bit. I just kind of want to mention that the upcoming conference is going to be July 5, 6, 7, and 8, which is a 4-day conference this year. It's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and instead of a 3-day conference. And the website for the conference Eric will be presenting at, the website is EnergyScienceConference.com. That's EnergyScienceConference.com. And you can click on the 2018 speakers, and so you can look at Eric's bio and his talk description. Just real briefly, it's called The Evolution of the Electrical Utility from Edison Up to the Present, and it will cover delta versus Y, grounded versus ungrounded, DC versus AC, star versus mesh, 50 versus 60 hertz, harmonics, EMP resistance, and other things related to the grid. And so the EMP resistance is going to be probably a significant part of it, just showing kind of the direction that the grid has gone over the last however many decades, which is kind of degrading over the years. And Eric's going to go into that and some possibilities of what the implications of that could be, if there is an EMP where it's kind of moved away from being EMP resistant to actually turning into a grid that's going to enhance and augment the EMP to actually cause more damage if something like that was going to happen. And I don't know if Eric is going to, maybe he can go into a little bit of the basics on that on this call. Also, if you are interested in any of the Eric's books or videos available through Emp Electronic Media, the website is emediapress.com. It's all one word, just the letter E, then mediapress.com. And when you check out of the shopping cart, we're offering a 25% discount on any of Eric's book and video packages. And in the shopping cart, you can use the coupon code EPD25. That's all lowercase. And in the right column, in the checkout cart for any of Eric's books or videos, if you enter EPD25 and you apply that code, that'll take 25% off of all that. And so right now, pretty much we have everybody muted out, and so I'm going to bring Eric on the line. And once we open up for questions, if you have any questions, hit 5*, and that'll put a little flag next to your phone number, and I'll unmute that so you can ask your question. So, Eric, Are there any announcements or anything you want to add to anything that I just added, or you want to just kind of?
The major engagement for me thus far has been the multi-wave oscillator. That was the grand event of this interval so far, which I don't know if you want to get into that or not, Aaron, but we can talk about that. And,
sure.
The only thing that I'm capable of doing right now is to continue on the writing, which is interesting because I always discover new things. So right now I'm involved in an extremely difficult chapter in this book I'm writing that I don't know if anyone will ever see it or not, but at any rate it gives me something to do. So I'm working on the skin effect chapter now, and that is a mathematically horrendous subject. And I get to learn again that all the textbooks have got everything all confused, and there's no way that you can gain any real understanding out of any of the textbooks on the subject, maybe with the exception of Steinmetz, and that's still very difficult because a lot of the misconceptions, mathematical misconceptions, were so established in his time that he just repeats them. So I've been on the border of going insane trying to solve all this stuff, but I broke through it and managed to come up with a very simple geometric and algebraic expression of how this process works, of why the resistance of a conductor increases with the square root of the frequency, which basically shows you that the conductor is not really conducting. It's more, how would you say, obstructing the entry of electricity, and the process of that electricity burns it up and turns it into heat. So at any rate, that has to be calculated in any transmission line problem. So the book is basically relates to the process of mathematics and what have you of transmission. An outgrowth of that was the presentation I gave 2 years ago, which dealt with telephone transmission theory, and that's several chapters also in my book. So at any rate, I'm on Chapter 11 now, and then Chapter 12, Volume 2, will wrap the whole thing up. So right now, all of the mathematics that originated from the very beginning of Volume 1, which was the presentation, the extraluminal systems of Tesla and Alexanderson, that was Volume 1, and then out of Volume 2 was the transmission and multiple coordinate systems. So all that is wrapping up now. All the various aspects of mathematics are coming to a head. In Chapter 11, the skin effect and the AC condition chapter, and then Chapter 12, all of this stuff will be applied to an actual transmission line problem, starting with having to go in and find out why fires are always starting on cross arms 8, 9, and 10 of a transmission line that somebody built for a radio station, and everyone's scratching their head. And then we, step by step, will go through where the mistake was made and why that happens. And then at the end of Chapter 12, between Volumes 1 and 2, there'll be the possibility of completely understanding the process of electrical transmission on transmission lines that you won't find in any textbook on the subject. So this has been a very, very long process. So right now I have 14 notebooks, 100 finished pages in each notebook, along with probably 70 to 100 diagrams. So it's going to be quite a piece when it gets done. And then I'm probably going to have to cut off here at Chapter 11 because I have to start on this presentation, and they take about 4 months. And it's just an unbearable thing to face that I'm going to have to go through all this again one more time. These things are incredibly difficult, and I never know where to begin. So I'll be glad when I get through that first part because it just wipes me out. The seismic thing, that basically ended with the presentation that was videoed. I was in the hospital right before that presentation, so that's why I wasn't looking too good or thinking too well, because I was in a hospital bed the day before. But I think that pretty much presents what the objective is, but the problem is there's just nobody nobody to really help me with it, and the unfortunate reality is we live in a completely useless society filled with useless people, and I don't know how to overcome that. As everything falls down around us, how am I going to put anything up? So that's kind of where things stand now.
So on this conference presentation coming up, do you want to just kind of give a brief summary of kind of what the aim is for that presentation? It's something that you've been, that's kind of been on the to-do list for a couple of years now.
Well, it's really, a lot of people are pushing me to write a paper or something on what in the hell is going on with the power grid, whether it's a result of mass insanity or if it's evil forces from, some dark basement somewhere or what, because the whole thing truly is going insane. And it irritates me on two levels in that I'm third generation of this stuff. And, my head has been looking up to the cross arms and insulators since the age of 6 in 1958. Looking at what my ancestors built, and I've just watched this whole thing go to hell. And then on top of that, it's creating massive levels of interference that are making the Earth signal reception thing damn near next to impossible. And an envelope of radio jamming exists around all major habitation centers that make it impossible for me to do any type of medium or shortwave reception. And this stuff is getting stronger by the day. We put the first element of the antenna up out here in the desert on our right-of-way, and then we found that the Earth harmonics generated by what we refer to as NEMV energy were 10 million times stronger than the signal, and was actually almost possible to derive a usable amount of power over the massive quantity of power line harmonics that are flowing inside the Earth. And every year it doubles or triples in intensity. So at any rate, it turns out to be then that the antenna system will be probably more useful for studying the nature of the power line harmonics than it will be for studying Earth signals, but which is okay. So that'll be another avenue of research. And of course, it doesn't interfere with using the antenna to transmit, nor does it interfere with its ability to operate in the VLF range, because that's outside of the range of the power line harmonics. So it's not the end of the world. And it will it gives some interesting experiments to learn ways to null out the power line harmonics. So there are some ways to do that. So it's not a complete loss, but it's a consideration.
What's an example of some experiments you can do where you're transmitting on the antenna line versus receiving, like Earth signals, for example?
Well, it involves a telluric transmission system, transmitting from point A to B through the ground, which is what Tesla had originally conceived, and Alexanderson had patented his own system. So I've made some improvements on the methodologies of that, and I want to apply that and send out one of the objectives here is to set up a couple of telluric transmitting beacons, one in the now abandoned maritime band below the AM broadcast. That would be about 500 kilocycles, and to transmit that through the Earth, like I was setting up to do at the RCA station in Bolinas before that got annihilated. And then try another one on ELF down around the audio range and see if it's possible to establish a long-distance communication system down on that range with the Alexanderson antenna. The broadcast band one, or the maritime band one, will be a Tesla transformer. Basically, it'll be a scale model of Colorado Springs. And the ELF one will be a full-blown 1 mile long Alexanderson antenna with 300 or 30-foot bore holes down into the Earth, holding capacitor electrodes to transmit into. As far as receiving the Earth signals go, the power line jamming really doesn't influence it above 15 kilocycles, so it's still possible to do a lot of sensing and get some precursor signals. But to do like I had at Landers, to get a full high-fidelity reception of the interior of the Earth will not be possible in this area, nor many other areas. It's got to get like 50 to 100 miles away from any type of source of disturbance, which is primarily created by the electrical grid being switched from a delta system to a Y system, which leads to produced generation of third-order harmonics, and then the bad practice of grounding the neutrals at the receiving end substation transformer, which then in turn broadcasts this energy into the Earth and also allows a nuclear EMP to fry the system. And this is being forced on all the utility companies by some agency or whatever that is a cult, and it makes no financial sense. It's costing the utility companies a fortune to convert over, but it's being forced, and it's also being forced to bypass all the transformers and connect the customer ground and neutral to the high voltage neutral, thereby lighting up the entire electrical system. And I've heard accounts of the stray ground currents being so bad around residences and on farms and stuff that it's driving the livestock nuts and even killing people's pets. People are getting severe shocks when they go in the shower, and the power company claims that these things, well, they don't exist. And then where I live over there in Owens Valley and the Death Valley area in general around it, some absolutely insane things are being done by one of the utility companies there. And the fuses are bypassed on substations. There was one instance where they built the substation wrong, and the primary side arced over to the secondary side. There was no relaying to trip it out. There was no overvoltage protection to short it to ground, and it fried most of the electronics of the residents in the town. The power company claimed it never happened, and then about 4 or 5 months before, because of bad construction practices, the bolts weren't tightened down, and the insulators, the ham radio people were telling me that they were getting loads interference out of the new substation. I told them they were full of it because there'd be no loose hardware. Should have all been tight. And then a windstorm came through and yanked one of the insulator pins out of the cross arm, threw the conductor on the cross arm, and started a fire that damn nearly burned the whole town down. And this is where our electrical grid stands today.
So this presentation that's going to be at the conference, it's like I mentioned in the beginning of the call, is evolution of the electrical utility from Edison up to the present. And if anybody's interested in coming to the conference, already 40% of the seats are already completely sold out, and there's still almost, 4.5 months or something like that until the conference. And so that means it's going to be sold out. But if you want to go to the conference and see Eric and meet him there in person, it's energyscienceconference.com, and then you can click on the register button. And again, so there's only about 90 seats left, and every year they get sold out pretty quick. Now, when you're mentioning using the transmission line for doing some Colorado Springs type experiments.
Well, that won't be the transmission line or Alexanderson antenna. That will be the Tesla system. I have some very large underground electrodes associated with the building here. One is the old, when this town first went together, the electrical lines to run the mine were so long, and the loads were so heavy at the end of the line that it really wasn't usable for lights or whatever, and there was just enough electricity to run the giant motors, some of them as much as 750 horsepower, that they put in a gas system, one of the earlier kind that they used to use. I think it was carbon monoxide and methane they derived from heating up coal and getting the vapors off of it, dropping water on it, or there was all kinds of different methods they made illuminating gas back around the turn of the 20th century. So I have a terminal here to that piping system, which runs through the entire town. It's probably about 2 square miles of this no longer used pipe. So that's going to be one of the electrodes. And then I got 2 massive water tanks, 15,000 gallon and 35,000 gallon, that will also constitute the grounding system. And then I can transmit tellurically with the Tesla transformer, miniature of the Colorado Springs, and then send out a test signal that be kind of maybe like a more of a contest type thing, or of interest to experimenters, that through the Crystal Radio Initiative and what have you, you can try to see if you can pick this signal up and then give me signal reports. And of course it'll be the same thing for the Alexanderson antenna out in the field. We'll probably start off at 18 kilocycles on that one, the original Bolinas frequency, and see what the range is on that. So that's the objective. And then the other objective, as far as this earth connection that I have here at the building, is then I can determine the absolute potential of NEMV energy and get an idea of what the nature of these impulses are, and the harm that they can cause to individuals and electrical equipment and whatever. And then the utility company here is very hostile and very insistent on eliminating all delta connections. So trying to get their cooperation to get this stuff out of my building is damn next to impossible. So it looks like it's going to cost about $30,000 to build an isolation network between their lines and our distribution system here. I don't know where that money's going to come from. But at any rate, right now, the interference is so strong that it's impossible to use any radio receiving equipment in the lower bands within the building. And it's connected to the metal siding of the building, and consequently, the whole side of the building is lit up with these impulse currents and harmonics that come through the line. So I'm very anxious to get some level of isolation transformer in and study these things and see exactly what their nature is. The power company wants $30,000 to set us up with our own transformer bank where we are not connected to the high voltage neutral, and then trying to get them to restore the power to the seismograph mine. They'll probably bilk us for about another $15,000. Initially, it was all built wrong, and then when they reconnected the town system from Delta to Y, the line was already horribly under-insulated, so one of the insulators caught on fire, and the poles is too small, and the lightning arresters are broken, and even though that's the power company's responsibility, they will charge us $15,000 to fix their problems, and then there will be the fight to keep their neutral off of our neutral. But I noticed that the telephone company central office here in town managed to accomplish that, and allegedly they will do that for the building here.
So the experiment where you could do a small-scale Colorado Springs transmission experiment, with those water tanks and the big grounding electrodes. So that you already answered one of the questions, which is probably one of the most common questions I get is, if people want to learn about the Tesla transmission systems, where do they start? And so probably the Crystal Radio Initiative is, would you say, the simplest way for people to kind of get their feet wet with that whole concept?
Yeah, well, that's how they would receive, because this will be the same thing, transmitting into the Earth, and then the challenge will be, can you receive it back out?
Right. So with this, I don't think anybody has done anything like this anywhere.
Well, some of the hams I know are starting, and they are using the basic layout that I put out there with the Crystal Radio Initiative, and have been successful on 1,800 kilocycles to 2,000 kilocycles, which is an amateur radio band, of communicating several hundred miles. And one of the hams, who's building the coils that will eventually be used here for that and the cosmic induction generator, if we ever get to that point, he has been successful in doing a longitudinal transmission through a conductor over a distance of 450 feet, which is rather remarkable for a frequency up in the megacycle range, because the wavelengths are usually less than that. And going through my the notes on my book, I think you have the first volume. I think you have the notebooks available on the internet, if I remember right. At any rate, notebook number 4 of volume 1 deals with the J.J. Thompson Faraday tube theory and the process of conduction and wires and things that lead to the skin effect and all that, which is an absolutely remarkable theory. It's completely valid. It leads to all the proper dimensions for resistance and what have you. Not that theory was readily understandable from the book, but I fought the situation for about 3 or 4 months, damn near threw the book over the side several times in frustration, because these guys, they don't give the dimensions and the variables mix up. X means something on page 1, and then on page 10, X means something else. But I broke through it, and out of that, I determined, and I think Tesla had discovered this, and J.J. Thompson demonstrates it, that there is a longitudinal conduction mode possible in what we normally call conductors of electromagnetism, which the skin effect shows that they're not. They're actually obstructors, but in the impulse current dielectric mode, it is possible for a one-wire non-electromagnetic transmission, and one ham I know on the East Coast has demonstrated this.
Okay.
So that was kind of exciting to see, these more abstract electrical theories actually turn into something that works, and then get a better understanding of it myself.
Hey, Eric, we're getting a lot of interference. I don't know if that's on my side or your side. It's kind of like a high-pitched whining noise.
I don't hear anything here.
Okay, now it's disappeared. So, yeah, if anybody is interested in the Crystal Radio Initiative or any of the other books or video presentations by Eric Dollard, you can get 25% off by using the coupon code EPD25. It's all lowercase on the checkout. But the Crystal Radio Initiative, that's a video presentation that walks you through the basics of making basically a Tesla-style crystal radio to pick up these earth signals or the ground transmission for whatever frequency the transmitter happens to be tuned towards. And also somebody named Simon Davies, he goes by DR Green in Energetic Forum. He's one of the few who have done quite a few experiments with some of Eric's work and what he's laid out over the years. And if you go to teslascientific.com, there's a free Crystal Radio Initiative calculator that makes it easy to do the calculations for the number of turns, the diameter of it, what gauge wire you're using, and everything else to be able to make your Tesla-style crystal radio receiver tuned to whatever frequency you want. And there's a more advanced calculator that you can purchase through that site, but that's at Tesla Scientific, and that goes hand in hand with the Crystal Radio Initiative. And then the notebook in Volume 1, I want to mention that in Volume 2, which Eric is working on right now, which you said you're up to like notebook number 12?
Well, I'm on Volume 2. I'm up on notebook number 9 right now. But
okay, number 9.
Whether Volume 1 and 2, I think it's up to 14, 12 or 14.
Okay.
I think it's 14, yeah, so that's 1,400 pages.
Okay, so on the on some of the Eric Dollard threads at energeticforum.com in the past, a lot of these notebooks that Eric was working on would be transcribed and would be typed into Energetic Forum so people could, learn about some of the stuff that Eric is writing about as he's writing about it. And Simon Davies is working on a a draft and a template right now for notebook number 1 of volume 2, which there's about 6 or 7 pages or something that he's working on. And as soon as he gets all the equations and stuff typed up, those are going to be posted in energeticforum.com for free. And so you can actually, read the book before it's actually published. And it will be copy and pasted right into Energetic Forum, probably from a Word document. And so that's going to be coming up pretty soon. And of course, when that goes into the forum, we'll be making announcements in the newsletters. Let's see. Do you want to? Should we go into a little bit about the MWO?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know if anybody's familiar with the MWO. That stands for Multi-Wave Oscillator, which was made by Georgius Lukovsky in the early 1900s. He was some type of, I think, Russian scientist or something, and maybe he lived in France. But he was kind of one of the early guys in a lot of the, I guess you could say, electroculture, which is a method of using electricity to enhance plant growth. But he wasn't necessarily doing that. But what he did was he examined these disease clusters that were in different areas. I don't know what areas he was researching, but he found that people with poor health in different areas had low electrical conductivity in the ground, low mineral content, and the atmospheric electrical environment in those areas was very poor. And so if you got the Earth as the neutral and you have the ionosphere how many miles up, there's, depends on whose paper you read, there's maybe between 300,000 volts, to 500,000 volts. And so what his goal was to kind of enhance the electrical environment in your local area to kind of enhance, your own vitality. And so some of the early experiments he started with was inoculating plants with certain types of cancer, because there are different types of plant cancers, and they would grow these tumorous type of bumps on them and on these different nodes and so forth. And what he did was he would take a semicircle ring of metal and put it around the base of the plant, which I guess whatever wavelength for whatever frequency corresponded to the length of that ring, it would resonate at that particular frequency, and the plant is bathed in this frequency. And over a couple months, the plant was cured. The cancer disappeared, and everything went back to normal. And so if you've ever seen one of these pictures where somebody is sitting in a chair and there's these two like concentric circle type antennas on either side of the person, while this high frequency, high voltage machine is running, that's kind of what came out of a lot of that research. And so last fall, Eric came up here to Spokane, and he was only supposed to be here for about a week because we're doing some work on his car, swapping out the engine and stuff, and turned into a probably 4.5, maybe 5-week stay. And during that time, some of us were interested in putting the MWOs into production, doing it the right way. And Eric had been interested in the MWO for many years, going back to the Integratron. Do you want to kind of maybe set the stage and give a little bit of background of where that came from?
The Integratron, now, of course, has been taken over by Commonweal and has nothing to do with the Integratron whatsoever. But originally, when it was started by George Van Tassel in the Southern California area, there was this kind of UFO cult that was quite active in the Southern California area, and of course, everybody kind of raised their eyebrow to it, but a lot of the engineers and what have you with the big aerospace companies, which were thriving in the Los Angeles area at the time, would all hang out and do these experiments and what have you. And George Van Tassel claimed that the fundamental principle behind the Integratron, which was in his account intended to be a rejuvenation device, was derived from Lukovsky, and no one had really heard of Lukovsky before that. And it's kind of interesting also that this UFO cult in the Los Angeles area were also the ones that kept the name of Nikola Tesla alive after he was dead and triply buried around World War II time. So even though these people were a bunch of goofballs, they kept this stuff, they kept it alive in people's memories. And then there was an individual named Bob Beck who was a rather enigmatic figure in this whole area, and he decided to try to duplicate this with, from his understanding of it. And these things became popular again. And then I showed up and introduced, about maybe 10 years after he started, introduced the physics of the Tesla situation with Bob Beck. And then these things started to come back into the forefront again. And the original Borderland Sciences had gotten this information through the Integratron and those people, and was starting to put that stuff out at the same time. And then I got involved with Borderland and then hit the MWO thing pretty hard, and came up with a number of my own ideas and what have you. And then that all kind of, when I went back to the shipyard, that pretty much ended. But then I think it's about 5 or 6 years ago, when I was still active on the energetic forum, somebody had found an actual Lukoski unit that had never been used or whatever, and unpacked the thing and then put that out on the internet. And then I wrote several articles about it on the energetic forum. Once I saw the diagram, there was some stuff that was actually absolutely preposterous how it was hooked up. And so at any rate, then I kind of lost interest in it. And then a couple of months ago, or a little longer, then this thing started coming more into the forefront. So at any rate, my objective then was to get this thing put together right and eliminate the things that cause all the severe electrical jamming and interference and problems. Because the original, when I first saw the thing on the internet of the wiring diagram and how the original one was configured, I immediately pronounced it an electromagnetic terrorism tool. And if you wanted to get yourself in trouble, there would be no better device to do it with. So at any rate, while I was up there in Aaron's area, I figured out how to get all that stuff suppressed and get all the energy and the main signal where it belongs, to get the whole thing balanced. Because it turns out to be that the Lukoski multi-wave oscillator configuration with the Tesla transformers is also a cosmic induction generator. And once you get the things balanced right, then it exhibits the character of the cosmic induction generator also, which ties into Wilhelm Reich's concept of cosmic superimposition. And it was quite remarkable how it all worked out so well. And then I took the thing from the wooden box and clip leads and wires laying all over the place and all that, and put the thing into a Navy standard package. And it was amazing how the Voodoo provided all the necessary materials, including the metal that it was made out of was already painted Bell Telephone Gray. And we put together this thing, and the performance was absolutely stunning. So now it's progressing from there. I think it's basically done in either the two forms that anybody would want, either the wrong way, that Lukoski had hooked it up because they couldn't figure out how to get around some of the problems, or the right way that I had already figured out previously from my experiments in Bolinas and in my high school laboratory a long time ago about how to do this stuff, oddly enough, before I even knew about any of these people.
So this is coming, so if anybody wants to be on a notification list of when these are available, there's a notification list at emediapress.com/MWO. And if you join that list, that's when we're going to announce that a website is available to go on there, learn more about these particular units being manufactured based on Eric's design, and then when they're available to purchase, notifications will go out on that list. So emediapress.com/MWO. So where that project is right now is there's a first production batch that's just about finished. We finally just got all the tuning right so that the primary and the secondary, or the secondary is in resonant with the primary tank circuit now. getting enormous sparks off of it. It's just working incredibly well. And there's a second batch that's already prepaid, and so we haven't opened it up to the public. That's just so we can, further the manufacturing process and get things streamlined so we can actually keep up with some volume. But we think maybe by the conference time, we'll be able to open it up to the public, and we'll be able to take orders for, doing some pretty decent volume production with these devices. But as Eric is mentioning, how Lakhovsky has it wired up, and then Eric's balanced method with the same unit, the same antennas and the coils and everything, you can hook it up one way and you can run it the George Lakhovsky way, which, even though when you look at the circuit, it's kind of a crazy setup, that's still the setup that has the historically proven results. But nevertheless, there's the balanced setup, which just means you just reconfigure how the coils are plugged into the unit for the balanced method, and so you'll be able to basically do both. The pulse modulator, which is the main unit in the metal case, is going to be universal, and so like Eric said, you're going to be able to use that as the pulse modulator for a cosmic induction generator, running it in the balanced method. If you want to do high voltage, high frequency experiments with like Tesla coils, for example, you're going to be able to use the same unit. So this one unit will basically do a whole lot of different things involved with high frequency, high voltage research and experiments. So and the units look absolutely beautiful. They're powder coated. They're all, looks like something, produced in a right out of a factory, basically based on, I think I mentioned if like, Eric and, Bell Labs and Western Electric and the U.S. Navy got together and made one of these things, that's basically what this unit looks like, and that's how it's put together. And it's, I'm going to have to say it's going to be the best quality, best built unit in the world right now for any commercially made MWO, which there's not many companies making them. There's, one company in the States making them, but it's in a wooden box. So you're going to get a lot of interference, a lot of long, scraggly wires in there. Plus the line filter and stuff wasn't even put in the right place in Peter Lindemann's unit. When he received that unit, it's not even built right. And the ones in Europe, you might pay, $25,000 because they put an absolute fortune into making a replica where it looks like something out of the early 1900s, just like Lakhovsky's. And if you want a replica, I guess that's a good way to go, but there's no reason to have it in the case 5 times bigger than it needs to be. And so not only is this one going to be pretty much the best unit built, it's also the most compact. And so we'll definitely be giving notifications on that. So, yeah, again, if you're interested in learning more about the MWO, emediapress.com/MWO, and you can join that notification list. And a percentage of the sales of those MWO units are going to go to EPD Laboratories, Inc., as a royalty payment for Eric's work that he put into designing it. And, Eric and Jeff working on building that over at the shop, they worked pretty much, from the time they woke up till bedtime 7 days a week for, 5 weeks. And so literally hundreds and hundreds of hours were put into that design. And so we're kind of anxious to let everybody see that. And we also have a brand new website dedicated for the MWO coming together. So that'll be launched sometime in the near future. Anything else you want to mention about the MWO? Or?
I think that pretty much covers it. One thing I do want to point out that, there's this book that has become available on the subject, and there's a lot of people saying a lot of things about the MWO, but unfortunately, a lot of that is really misleading, and it's kind of sad that that all this misinformation gets put out there, and then I get angered by the fact I try to tell people how this stuff works, and then they don't want to hear it. They just keep bellowing this and that, and pump them scalar waves and all the rest of it, and then. But at any rate, at least I did determine what is going on with the thing, and a lot of the stuff that's being said about it, even what Lukowski himself said, is not really true. But nevertheless, the thing has a proven track record, and that's what's important. And then when enough of this stuff gets established, then it can be scientifically determined exactly what it is that's going on in making this thing work, whether it's just simply the longitudinal displacement current of the Tesla transformers, or if it's some type of waveform produced by the ring antenna arrangement, which is not really an antenna, it's more of a capacitor. There's absolutely no way that this thing can produce a harmonic series of frequencies because of the overcoupling. There's no way that it can broadcast wavelengths into subject in between the antennas because electromagnetically it's an end-fire antenna, and there's a lot of stuff to be resolved, and most of the analysis and theories that people have presented about this thing are completely misleading. So in that sense, it's kind of fascinating that it's a wide open subject, and there'll probably be some very interesting discoveries made, and then various modes of transmission can be analyzed, and then the results can be compared. So I would say, over some interval of time, like about a year or so, this could lead to some rather fascinating results.
Yeah, and the manufacturer that's going to be making these, as well as any of the distributors for it, are not making any health claims. If that's what people are looking for, we can't directly address that. It's basically sold as a electrical test device, for people who want to experiment with, these type of circuits. But so yeah, stay tuned. We're definitely we're going to be putting out some notices on this here not too far from now. So yeah, again, if you're interested in any of Eric's books or videos, you can go to emediapress.com, and any books or videos, if you use EPD25, that's a coupon code, EPD25, all lowercase, in the shopping cart, that'll take 25% off. And not only Eric's books and videos, but that's also on that John Polakowski Cosmic Induction Generator presentation, which this MWO project is actually somewhat related to that as far as the pulse modulator is concerned, and doing the balance system with the coils, hooking it up Eric's method. And so is there anything else you want to add, Eric, or go into anything else before we open up for some questions?
Well, I think that pretty much covers it. One thing I was thinking about is Justin and I did that kind of crude video of the Alexanderson antenna element out here in the desert where we picked up the power line interference. Is that available, or what?
Yeah,
how does one get to that?
Okay, so that's on my YouTube channel somewhere. Let me get the data when that was posted.
About that, it would be good that people could. It's not a very good video, but you can kind of get an idea what's going on. It's going to have to be done over again, where everything is clear and easy to understand, and it wasn't just a first-time situation. It's same thing with the musical seismograph video. The signals out of the seismic transducers weren't optimized, and things were kind of shabby and what have you, and you couldn't really hear what was going on, so that will probably have to be done again at some point also. But the antenna thing is, that one really needs to be redone. But that's all a matter of when the weather's right and somebody can come here and do that.
So if anybody goes to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Aaron Murakami, you can type in, or just search in the Google search. The title of the video is called Earth Signals Received, Eric Dollard's Advanced Seismic Warning System Success. And that's the video. And it's good enough for people to kind of get the idea of what's going on. You can kind of hear what's going on and see what you're receiving in that. I think that's where you wrap a wire around a little AM radio and tapped into one of the ground wires or something, and you're picking up reception.
Oh, no. This is the one where where we had the car backed up to the terminal pole with all the equipment in it.
Okay, yeah, okay. I got the right title then.
Okay.
Yeah, so Earth signals received. Eric Dollard's Advanced Seismic Warning System success, and the date of that video is when it was posted on YouTube is December 8, 2016. So you can go there and watch that video. It's 37 minutes long. So, okay, well, you want me to go ahead and open up for questions, Eric?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. If you have a question, everybody's muted out right now. Let me get back to the screen here. If you want to ask a question, go ahead and hit 5*, and that'll put a little flag next to you, and then I'll just unmute you, and I'll call out the last few digits of your phone number, and go ahead and say your name, where you're from, and go ahead and ask your question. Okay, let's see. Okay, I just unmuted you. If you actually don't have your phone number listed here, but if you just got a little notification that you've been unmuted, go ahead and introduce yourself and ask your question. Hello?
Was it me, Aaron?
Yeah, that's you. Yeah, who is this?
This is Aaron Zielinski from New Jersey. I played around with some of the Tesla coil stuff and was able to somewhat create some of the bulb stuff, and was wondering if it could involve anything with cycling Earth ground with anything that's going on in the ionosphere. Because when I had to use both ends of the Tesla coil and then capacitate it inside the bulb, or try to refuse the capacitance inside the bulb. I had multiple coils receiving the outside system of the coil and then pumping it into the bulb, basically. May I?
So what is it you're asking?
With the cosmic systems, is it cycling anything that could be in vacuum, sort of like how when water's in a vacuum you get a chiming bell or a huge pulse increase when it slams shut?
Yeah, I'm not quite certain that relates to what's going on inside the bulb, but there is some kind of strange pressure that appears even though the bulb has a vacuum in it. But to quantitatively state what's going on, that's kind of beyond anybody right now.
For what I could tell, the interaction of electrons is more or less a toroidal pulse along the wire.
No, that's electrons and what have you. That doesn't really relate. This stuff all neutralizes that out. This is an ether phenomenon.
Okay.
I think you might be trying to read a little more into it than what's actually going on. I would recommend that you read Wilhelm Reich's book called Cosmic Superimposition, and you might get a better idea of what the overall theory of how these formations occur is about.
Because I did start looking into the artist or the color theory from. I'm sorry, sorry about the background noise if you hear it. Either I have a 3D printer running. Is the ether at least? Is it a cyclable phenomenon?
I don't know what you mean by cyclical.
Well, from what they're doing in plasma generators, or fusion generators anyway currently, from what I could tell, it's just friction upon plasma in itself.
Yeah, this what's going on with the Tesla transformers doesn't relate to any of that at all.
Or at least the mercury RAM version.
Completely unrelated to friction and electrons, and has nothing to do with that. It's a creational process. It's the same thing that causes the galaxies and the stars and the suns and all of that type of stuff to form and make the shapes they do. To attempt to analyze it in a quantitative manner in terms of, hydrodynamical theories and electrons and all that type of stuff is, it's beyond that.
Is it expandable or is the phenomenon when you're experimenting with the bulbs, is it just easily expandable inside the bulb and then collapses due to just normal atmospheric stuff, or anything that it's just the discharging factor?
Yeah, it wants to expand and get out of the bulb.
Okay.
It pushes on the glass to do that, even though there's no physical pressure inside the bulb.
Did you ever I've seen some people and some of yours where you're holding the bulbs when you've ramped them up that high. Did you see any interactions with soft tissue while they were up that high, or would it be too dangerous to be anywhere near, or have any type of analog, like a hot dog, or like Mythbusters did with the Meat Man?
Yeah, I couldn't quite get all that, but it's really not advisable to have anything else around in the field. But it's not particularly dangerous to the body, but then that's all, a matter of interpretation of what you want to expose yourself to. So I haven't had any problems in dealing with that. I mean, I used to be more brazen about it when I was a child, light up 100-watt incandescent lamps off my watch band when I connected myself to my Tesla transformer and my radio transmitter, but my arms didn't fall off.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't recommend anybody doing that. I wouldn't do it anymore. So it's it's up to your own discretion what kind of exposure you want. You can receive very serious burns, but you won't get any shock.
That might explain why my fingers were fusing to the bulbs.
So when my fingers were on the socket of the bulb, it tended to burn my fingers. So the bulb was normally in the end of a long wooden stick, because with higher.
Oh, when I was holding my bulbs, I was holding it by the glass, and I would have the bulb eventually fuse to my fingertips.
Yeah, well, it's not a good idea. Put the bulb on the end of the stick. Don't, burning the bulb explodes, you'll injure yourself.
Oh, surprisingly, it wouldn't actually explode. It started cycling around itself and would change significantly into a red and blue spectrum from either side of the probe.
Yeah, but nevertheless, the bulb could shatter, and don't hold on to the bulb when you're sticking it in the field.
Okay. Probably. Yeah.
Did you say your name is Aaron? Did you say your name is Aaron? Aaron from New Jersey?
Yeah.
Okay, and you were about to mention something?
It was Edward Babbitt. Or Edwin.
Babbitt.
Yeah.
Babbitt. Oh, Babbitt. Okay.
I started looking into that, and I was fascinated by what his theory was for the harmonics causing the color, and decided to try to ramp that into the coil, and that's how I would get the color separation in the bulb.
Let's go on to the next question.
Okay. Thanks, Aaron.
Okay. Bye.
Okay. Let's see. If your number ends in 5113, you're unmuted. Go ahead and introduce yourself, your name, where you're from, and go ahead and ask your question.
Oh, hi. My name is Eric Sparkman, and I'm from Kentucky at the moment. I just wanted to say I'm a big fan of both of you guys. You're really inspirational, and just wanted to give you some moral support for all the inevitable difficulties in life.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was wondering, what is the nature of inertia in your particular framework of theory?
Well, I don't have a theory of inertia.
Okay.
Well, other than J.J. Thompson attributes it to an electrical situation, but I really am not one inclined to theories.
Okay.
Inclined towards engineering solutions to practical type things, building stuff, and experimenting. I'm into pretty much building things either algebraically or physically, and not getting involved in a bunch of theories.
Yeah, I can understand that. The ultimate arbiter of intellectual achievement would, I guess, be results. Everything else is just hot gas.
Oh, there's no shortage of that, and it makes people plenty rich.
I was just wondering, quick question. I got interested in analog computers, and there isn't really a lot of material going around, and you're like pretty expert at it. Where would I start to learn about stuff like that so I could play with chaos theory or something?
Yeah, well, I don't know what application it has to chaos theory. That's another theory. Analog computers usually centered around a device called an operational amplifier and their associated feedback networks.
Okay.
And they were quite large machines, usually used lots of vacuum tubes. I worked on one of the last ones in existence at College of Marin. When I got out of the Navy, what the analog computer concept that I'm involved in are analog networks that simulate the existence of a real network. For example, maybe a 70-mile long telephone line that you don't have 70 miles, you don't have the wire, you don't have the place to put it, but you can build that on the bench and study all the behaviors of that line without having to have the actual line. The power companies used to do this a lot way back. They would build analog networks of proposed transmission systems and then study the transients and what have you. This is something that was originally proposed by Arthur Kennelly, and Kennelly and Steinmetz built some rather large ones at where Steinmetz taught, which I forget the college that he taught at, but it's mentioned in some of the books. So there's basically, this day and age, there's really, this stuff is all dead and gone. I don't know where you would find any information. My entire library, has been pulled from library shelves and what have you. So whatever I have in my library that is basically the foundations of electrical engineering no longer exists outside of here. Wow. It's all been taken to the dump. And once the digital beast gains its final control, this stuff will all be gone for good.
Eric, would you say that he should maybe watch those transverse longitudinal network videos?
Yeah, those original Borderland videos, got into some of that, and then I think you did something here with ones that I was experimenting with on the bench. So.
So are you talking about where you had magnetism, the capacitors in series and parallel?
Yeah, the capacitors and the coils and all that kind of stuff. But then the thing is, I don't know if you want to do this stuff in terms of all of these cockamamie theories that are running around now. I don't even know if it has any application to any of that. So
yeah, I don't know.
Analog networks are mostly used for signal processing and that kind of stuff, and some mathematical stuff way back, integration and differentiation and those kind of things. But the digital turned out to be an effective way to do it, and it took up less room. So none of that stuff really is around anymore. But like I say, the central component in the analog computer, the active one, when they were, actually were being used in computers, is the operational amp and its feedback network. And I think you can still find information on that.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. So any other questions? Or
I got like 20 pages of them if you want to just I'm sure somebody else wants to talk, though.
Okay. Well, yeah, let me open up a question from somebody else, and when I ask for more questions, just go ahead and hit 5-star, and we can get back to you.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thanks, Eric. Okay, if your number ends in 6597, you're unmuted. Go ahead and say your name, where you're from, and go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, my name's Casey. I'm calling from Omaha, Nebraska. Eric mentioned earlier that there was a particular grounding practice associated with Y-phase construction where I made a note, they're grounded at the endpoint transformer and it broadcasts broadly, and then I kind of lost track. And I guess is the point the interference with the ability to broadcast alongside whatever that trash is?
Yeah, I didn't quite get that sentence, but
well, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but what happens is here's the process. So when you have a 3-phase system,
yes,
and you multiply the frequency by 3, which is the third harmonic, which is the harmonic that's aggravated by a 3-phase system, because you have the third harmonic and you have 3 phases, and the third harmonic is generated by mostly all the electrical loads now, because they're all silicon devices or related type of things that have nonlinear characteristics. All the transformer iron generates the third harmonics. When it's excited, the delta shorted that out. It was not possible for these harmonics to get into the system. The Y, rather than neutralizing it, aggravates it. So what this stuff does is collects at the neutral of the transformer. At the third harmonic, the current flow in all 3 phases on the conductors are in phase, traveling in the same direction. So
right,
there is no longer an electromagnetic boundary condition, and it becomes a giant antenna. It seeks either the neutral, which may or may not be on the high voltage side of these long-distance transmission lines, but if it doesn't have a neutral to get back in, then it goes in the earth. Now, normally in a rational world, you do not ground any of the transformer windings at the receiving end. That's only done at the sending end. That way, if there's a phase to ground fault, the sending side senses that and relays the system out. If you ground both ends, it becomes much more difficult to do that relaying, and you lose your ground fault protection. That's one of the biggest objections to the power distribution system as it exists today, is it is no longer possible to provide ground fault protection, and consequently it's an exceedingly dangerous system. So when you have all 3 of these currents flowing in the same direction, then they flow in the same direction in the windings of the transformer and then flow in the earth, trying to find their way back to the sending end neutral, which may be hundreds of miles away. And consequently, you have a massive quantity of electric power flowing within the earth. It's not 60 cycles. It's the third and ninth harmonics of 60 cycles, because in a 3-phase system, only the 3s times 3s and what have you can arrive. The odd order harmonics that are not triples, like the 5th harmonic, will be neutralized. Now, if you happen to have a nuclear EMP, that creates a traveling wave which gets coupled into the power line and tends to tilt down towards the earth in what's called the Beveridge antenna. And if the receiving end neutral is grounded, then that being a zero sequence current, like the harmonic currents, will flow in all the same directions in the transformer windings, saturate the transformer, which will no longer be able to generate an electromotive force, and short-circuit the line and damage the transformer. During massive solar flares, this happens on the connecting stations between Canada and the United States. It tends to blow up the transformers. There's a special transformer winding configuration called the zigzag configuration that neutralizes that. But properly, the receiving end transformers should always be connected in delta. which is not done anymore because there's some kind of United Nations rule now that all delta connections are to be eliminated.
Okay. Now, and just to follow up, early on you mentioned in regard to the multi-wave oscillator, I think you were speaking generally about the resistance of a conductor increasing at the square
root of the frequency.
Okay. Now, would that's going to be a function of the quality of the conductive material?
If the conductivity of the material is high, the effect is worsened. If the permeability of the conducting material is high, it also worsens the problem. If the frequency is increased, it worsens the problem. All of them affect it with proportion to the square root. So if you have 4 times the conductivity, the skin effect will be twice as bad.
So is it all
essentially the conductor's conductivity is, the more it causes the conductor not to conduct. So the concept of conductivity is erroneous. What's involved here is something called the relaxation time of the conductor. It can hold the magnetism out for so long, and then the magnetism sinks in. And the longer that relaxation time, the more the conductor appears to be a resistance. So as you start to increase the frequency, if the time period of the cycle starts to become significantly shorter than the relaxation time of the conductor, then the electricity can't get in, and the metal inside the conductor not only is not doing anything, but in some cases the current flow towards the center of the conductor can actually be in the opposite direction from the current flow towards the periphery of the conductor, and then it circulates in eddy currents and then burns up the electricity, and the conductor gets very hot, even though its supposed conductivity is supposed to prevent that. The conductivity is actually making it worse. So the relaxation time is derived from the ratio of the permeability of the substance of the conductor to magnetism to the resistivity of the conductor. In other words, what is the volume resistivity of the material? You divide the permeability by the resistivity, and that, after you drop out the area of the conductor, that will give you the time constant for relaxation time of the conductor. So I already wrote extensively about this in the J.J. Thompson chapter of Volume 1 of my book, Notebook Number 4.
Very good. Thank you. I'm a big fan. Appreciate your time.
Okay. You're welcome.
Thanks, Casey. Okay, let's see if anybody else has any questions. Go ahead and hit 5-, and that will put a little flag up by your name, and I'll go ahead and unmute you. So 12:16 right now, so about an hour, 15 minutes into this call. So maybe we can wrap it up here in about maybe 15 more minutes. Okay, let's see. Okay, so we have Eric from Kentucky again. Okay, just a second. Let me unmute you here. Okay, go ahead, Eric.
Hey, I just wanted to ask you about, you had mentioned in one of your videos the impulse electricity. Tesla managed to have that system self-reference itself, and it no longer needed a ground. I mean, if you don't mind, could you just kind of like elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, that's not specific to impulse electricity.
Okay, thank you.
What it is, it's a transformer that has only one phase.
Okay.
He created a transformer that has only one phase or one pole, so that way you could connect it to something like the Earth and have a current flow without having to have another wire connected to something else because there's nothing else to connect it to. So in that case, it was usually just a capacitor terminal raised up on a platform like the dome in Wardenclyffe. The misconception, Constantine Mile idiots and Soviet Bearden's Kaler conspiracy crowd and all that misrepresent the thing over and over and over again, that the transmission is from the aerial capacitor. It's not. It's into the ground. The aerial capacitor is just a reflection point of the monopolar transformer, which is referred to as a Tesla coil. That can be with impulse current or it can be with a sine wave. The waveform makes no difference. It's a property of the transformer itself.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Eric, was that the extraluminal transmission presentation where you went into that monopolar system?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So
it's not really. There's no clear explanation of why it does that. It has something to do with the fact that that one end of the transformer is 90 degrees out of phase with the other end of the transformer, so there's no way you can have two poles. So when one's positive, the ground terminal is positive, the elevated capacity is zero, and when the ground terminal is zero, the elevated capacity is positive, and so on through the cycle. So there's no plus or minus. That's basically what's going on.
Oh, wow. So the presentation on that is at extraluminaltransmission.com. That was the extraluminal
the extraluminal presentation was mainly the material that led up to the understanding of how these things worked, and then there was the practical examples. You know, the Alexanderson antenna, the Marconi antenna, the DWP transmission line, and Colorado Springs. But the bulk of the presentation was to lay the groundwork so that it was understandable why these things came about, because you can't just say this or that without laying the groundwork first. So all of the misconceptions that people had in their minds had to be swept away before the actual systems could be presented and understood.
Right.
That's the complication with most of my presentations is about 3 of the 4 hours is spent on laying the groundwork for the last 45 minutes.
Right. You have to counter all that theoretical bias just to be able to begin.
So I have to establish the coordinates and the dimensions of what's going on and you know, cleanse it of the misconceptions of physicists, which they don't have a clue, yet they want to always throw their 2 cents in the deal.
Right. Hey, thank you, Aaron, for the website.
Sure. You have any other questions, or?
I'd like to squeeze off one more if you guys don't mind.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so you guys were talking about this Lakovsky multi-wave. Oh, sorry, Lakovsky multi-wave oscillator, and it just kind of like it kind of sounded a little bit like the Royal Rife microscope and maybe what he was doing. And I had recently read something where they're talking about how junk DNA is actually serving a purpose as some kind of waveguide. I mean, I don't know if that even makes sense, but it's like
there's a lot of speculation about exactly what you're talking about.
Okay.
Nobody really knows, but the Lakovsky is distinctly different from the Rife technology, where the Rife technology is specifically a resonant frequency phenomenon based on whatever resonant frequency is of a pathogen, like a bacteria or virus or something. And just like how an opera singer breaks a wine glass with their voice, is that they hit the resonant frequency of that crystal and then increase the amplitude of it, and then it shatters it. And that's basically what the Rife technology is supposed to be. I happen to manufacture the only real Rife technology that's close to that, which is available at sidebandgenerator.com. That has a 3.1 megahertz fundamental frequency, where lower frequency audio frequencies are swept through a certain range and mixes with that, and it creates sidebands. That's a frequency higher and lower than the 3.1 megahertz. And as those are sweeping, it hits all the frequencies that Rife which are known as the so-called Rife frequencies. And that's piggybacked or superimposed on a 8 to 9 cycle per second square wave. And so the low frequency, low current square wave like that can actually get it to penetrate into the body, for example. That way you don't need a big high power system delivering it through plasma tubes and that kind of stuff, which just mostly burns up most of the energy anyway. So that's at sidebandgenerator.com. We don't make any health claims or anything. It's just so you can study how those frequencies are being made, and it's basically a test device. But that's the Rife deal. The Lakhovsky one, his idea was that it would resonate every single cell in the body. It would resonate your mitochondria, all the chromosomes, and everything. There's something called a transmembrane potential, which is like a voltage potential between the inside and the outside of your cell. Mm-hmm. And if that voltage is too low, you can't get proper nutrient delivery, through the fatty membrane, the bilipid membrane of the nutrients.
Channels won't work either.
Yeah. So with the Lakhovsky idea, even way back in some of his early writings, he goes into the concepts of the cellular resonance idea, which, it's all still theoretical, but he did have results, which is that if you're resonating all, 10 trillion plus however many cells are in your body, that I don't think he spelled out the transmembrane potential, but that would have to be increasing, which means now you have a higher voltage potential between the inside and the outside of the cell, which means you can actually, have proper delivery of nutrients into the cells. Not only that, it's going to kick in the mitochondria in the high gear, so the ATP production goes up, and simultaneously the redox signaling molecule production is going to go up. And so, but of course, we're not going to be having any medical claims or even, the word health is probably not even going to be on the website. It's just, it's an electrical reproduction, proper reproduction of the Lakhovsky unit, which you can either run to the put the output to the coils like Lakhovsky or Eric's balanced method. So that's the difference between the Lakhovsky and the Rife.
Cool. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks for taking my questions, guys. Really appreciate your work.
Okay. Thank you.
Gonna try and go to the conference this year.
Okay. Yeah, if anybody's on the call that wants to come to the conference, 40% of the seats sold out pretty much instantly right after we opened up for payments. There's 90 seats left. You can go to energyscienceconference.com and you can register and get your ticket there. It's going to be a 4-day conference this year, July 5, 6, 7, and 8, which is a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It's the day after 4th of July, and so, if you're into traveling and want to bring your family along or whatever, Spokane Coeur d'Alene area is a nice place to celebrate 4th of July if you happen to be in the place, and then you'll already be here for the conference. One thing you might want to consider. So let's see. If nobody else has a question, we can probably go ahead and wrap it up. If there's any more questions, just hit 5* and I'll unmute you. You can ask your question. Otherwise, we can go ahead and wrap it up. And also on Eric's website is ericpdollard.com. That's P for Paul, his middle name, ericpdollard.com. And in the right column, there's information on how to make donations to the 501c3 nonprofit organization. It is a charitable organization, public charity, and so all donations are tax deductible. There's a link where you can donate directly to PayPal, and there's an address where you can send payments. There's a Spokane P.O. box where you can write checks or money orders to EPD Laboratories, Inc., and then I'll in turn deposit that to the bank account down there in Nevada for the nonprofit. And so any final words, Eric? Or
No, I guess that kind of, we've gone through all of it. Yeah, what did dawn on me is basically the situation here is pretty well paid off and all that, so we're not under duress anymore of losing the building or any of these kind of things. So now whatever money comes in can go directly into putting the things together here without any fear of losing it. So that's our basic one big step forward right now. Is we got to the point. So now it's just a matter of moving on from there, getting the right people in here to help out and make progress on things.
Yeah. Okay. So the building is practically paid off, and some of the donations coming in is taking care of that. So, as Eric mentioned, any donations are going to go straight into the project, and we'll of course put up periodic updates. And if you have a background in any of this, and you're interested in possibly volunteering or helping on the project, we don't have a lot of funds, obviously, with this type of nonprofit, but if you're in a position to cover your own travel and lodging and food expenses, to go there and work on some of the stuff with Eric out in the field, I'd recommend just kind of introduce yourself through a mail, through the snail mail. At ericpdollar.com. In the right column, there's the address to Lone Pine. It's a general delivery address in Lone Pine, California. And just write Eric a letter with introduction about yourself, some of your background, what you're interested in doing, and how you'd like to contribute. And when we have the board meetings and stuff, we can take that into consideration if that's something you would like to help out with. And
right now, my problem, with Justin not being involved anymore is I have no linemen. And consequently, there's things that need to be taken care of out there, and I got nobody to help me get the ladder out there, or that basic kind of stuff. And if people want to help out, they need to be qualified, they need to be self-reliant, and they need to be able to spend extended periods of time outside without the weather affecting them. And, of course, have the necessary strength, and it would be preferable if they would have some small, like Toyota four-wheel drive pickup truck to get into some of these locations. People that just want to come to be groupies or, play around or whatever, that doesn't do me any good. I got to have somebody out there, that can drag wire and move equipment around and that kind of stuff and know how to handle themselves. I can't have somebody that's going to get hurt or not knowing what they're doing. So that's the main problem right now is somebody with line construction experience or enough basic like contractor or whatever experience in handling building things out of wood and digging holes and that kind of stuff, and being able to spend extended periods of time out in the environment without it injuring them. If such a person exists and lives in around this area, and it's practical for them to get here and spend some time here, I need somebody's help real bad right now.
Yeah, so it's a few hours away from northwest of Vegas. That's kind of the general area, just to give everybody an idea. So, yeah, definitely if that's something you'd like to participate in and you have a strong work ethic, and go ahead and send a letter with introduction and a little bit about your background and stuff, and definitely include a phone number, and send that to Eric at the Eric Dollard General Delivery, Lone Pine, California. And what's the zip code, Lone Pine?
93545.
Yeah, 93545, and that address is in the right column. So,
another thing also is is a good bench technician that can deal with this vacuum tube and transistor technology and fix stuff, and somebody with experience, preferably the Navy or the phone company or something like that, that could come here and and work on some of the equipment. That would be beneficial also. That's more of an indoor type of thing, so it wouldn't be as harsh. But it can't be. It's got to be somebody with experience, with extensive experience that knows what's going on. This is not, an amateur type operation. It just end up getting in the way and won't really help anything. So, a lineman and a bench technician. Those are the two things that are needed here.
And would you say project manager?
Well, we could use a project manager because there's potential funding coming up with somebody that's very well experienced in that and can go, get the contractors and manage them and and get this whole thing laid out, because it's been requested right now that that a financial statement be made of what it's going to cost to develop the mine, what it's going to cost to get the basic workshop finished here and the central office. And we're open for bids. So if somebody wants to show up and give an estimate, it's here and it's waiting. Somebody can get here, and they're an experienced professional, and they want to take this on, and it could very well be and should be a paying position while it lasts, because I'm not expecting anybody to do this stuff for free, because then they won't show up, or I'll end up being that Eric, or I'm not going to go through that anymore. So yeah, that's another thing, is we need a project manager to work on getting the terminal facility built into the mine, to get the contractors and everything together for that, and the central office and the workshop together here in the building. That's needed right now.
Okay.
Sounds like somebody else.
Okay. Yep. So any final words, Eric, or?
That's it.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for being on the call. Thanks for your time, Eric. We'll get this call here up on YouTube shortly, and also I guess that's about it. And then I'll call you after on some of the military handbook and stuff. So thanks a lot, everybody, for being on the call.